Welcome to the Film Realist podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody. That is hopefully for
I'm
somebody.
so excited.
I so that's a bit for Chris and I. Chris Pagonis is back on the Film Realist podcast, a founding member of some degree of the Film Realist podcast, and I saw this with Chris. And we could not stop talking about it, not for good reasons. So we are going to do that today. And we are going to be reviewing, I don't even think I've said yet, this podcast is already off the rails, Madam Web, the latest in, and I had to look this up, Sony's Spider-Man universe. I prefer when it was like Sony's Spider-Man universe of Marvel characters, or when it was called SPUM, because I think SPUM fits much more accurately with what we're going to talk about today. And so, as for every feature film review, outside of the occasional few, there will be a non-spoiler section as well as a spoiler section. Now, to the 3 people who saw this on opening weekend, thank you for joining us. Enjoy this upcoming sound clip.
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
So you and I saw Matt. I based on our conversations we had yesterday, I know we're going to have more fun talking about it. And so listeners know I cannot stand, and you know this, Chris, we see pretty much everything together. Chris is my movie boyfriend. And so we see everything together, and you know how much I hate talking in the theater. I hate it. It absolutely drives me insane. And I'm going to say, we talked throughout this entire movie. To be fair, It was the Thursday night, and I think there were 2 other people in the theater. So
I felt like I was with your alter ego. Like Lyle was with me that night.
Yeah.
It was full Cape Fear, feet
Yeah.
up, you sitting there laughing. The amount of that came out was amazing.
Yeah, it was Niall Caranya. That's who was at this film. So it has become a trend for I'm going to start off positively, not about the movie. Just there is this, I'm choking on a peanut. Sorry. I got some mixed nuts for Valentine's Day from Nalina, from a local place. They're very good. There's a Chipotle peanut. It's great. I really enjoy those ones. Anyways, there's been this sentiment post Spider-Man coming to the MCU about like, oh, don't let Sony handle Spider-Man. As much as I don't think the Tobies hold up as much as I enjoyed them with the first 2, obviously, when they came out. But pretending that Sony has never known what to do with Spider-Man, I think is a significant amount of revisionist history. Spider-Man, X-Men, and Blade are the reason we got to the MCU. It doesn't happen otherwise. So you need to pay credit to the founders of this. Obviously, you had a succinct vision from Sam Raimi and so on and so forth. Now, however, Sony managed to make a movie so bad with Venom that it was so much fun to watch that it almost made $1 billion, which I don't think anybody still understands. Looking up what was the exact number. Just under 900 million, which is madness. And so, of course, they've continued to do this. They haven't, until Venom 2, had an actual cameo from a Spider-Man, that being an unused shot from No Way Home. And then we get Madam Web, and we're not going to talk about its connections to the larger SPUM. I'm just calling it SPUM. SSU is just not as fun. Universe, because I would classify that as spoilers. It's hilarious to me that this movie exists in general, because I'm sure you remember, Chris, the 2014 Sony hack, and that this was one of the alleged films they were going to be working on, which made absolutely no sense, particularly being people who watched cartoons in the 90s. Madam Web sat in a chair, and she was voiced by Stan Lee's wife. And so that character really doesn't do anything. And I didn't want to just be throwing shots at everybody involved with the movie, because I don't think that's fair. I don't want to sit and talk about how awful everything is, because I think everybody outside of a couple people in particular put in their work. S.J. Clarkson has worked on a ton of prestige television, more than I was even aware of. Whether it was Dexter, she worked on Succession, Jessica Jones, Orange is the New Black, like a lot of other things. And unfortunately, it would appear she was given a script to a film that was supposed to come out in 2003. And so that's where we are now, Chris. So without full-blown spoilers, how did you feel about the movie?
I mean, it was hard. It was a rough watch. It's an incomplete movie. It really is. They had sort of pieces they just threw together, and it seems like they were just fulfilling a contract obligation, which apparently Sony has every 3.5 years. They have to make a film like this to keep the rights going.
Yeah, I don't
so apparently that's what they were trying to do, and just sort of fill the gap so that they can keep their contracts.
What I found really interesting, and you and I had a conversation about this, and I think we can have it without getting into spoilers, which is press junkets have been a backbone of the film industry for quite a while. It was even more noticeable the impact that they make on general audiences during the strikes with not being able to promote films. Again, this coming out in the middle of February. It does feel hilarious to me that this comes out is likely not to do well. We're recording a little bit early than I would normally. We're recording this on the Friday, the 16th. So overall box office numbers haven't been estimated yet. I mean, it's unlikely to make its money back. But February, I would say, from probably about 2018 onward, with something like Black Panther, which made $1 billion, seemed to be that February was no longer a movie, or a month, I should say, where you dumped terrible movies. That's obviously not the case with this, but it's interesting to me that the two lead screenwriters in this in particular worked on the story for Power Rangers. Now, they're not overall listed as the major screenwriters. That goes to John Gatins, which is a film I did quite enjoy. And I was trying to explain this to my dad, friend of the show, hi David, that there are, without getting into, this is not a spoiler, but this reminded me of a movie. I don't actually know if it got made. I don't know if you've heard about this, where they were going to make a movie about David Bowie, but they couldn't get the rights to David Bowie's name or the music. So you had to make this weird amorphous thing that couldn't reference anything, and there are references in this, but that's a mess. And not to mention, getting back to the press junkets of it all, is that you cast somebody who is recognizable to some degree because of the 50 Shades films and her parents, which is not a shock. Hollywood nepotism, at the end of the day, doesn't affect anyone outside of the industry. And what I don't understand is, getting more critical, the way that the character of Cassie Webb is written is unlikable. The character has minimal redemption at the very end of the film. The arc is almost non-existent. And when you make a lead character like this, I don't care if she succeeds, which ultimately to me is a massive failure, because you can introduce a character where they are flawed and ultimately they are going to overcome those things to become the hero that they are. This film unfortunately doesn't do that. Positively, I think all the Spider-Women costumes that you would have seen in the marketing are quite good. It's practical superhero costumes are some of my favorite. And the fact that we get to see almost probably the best we're ever going to get moving forward, something like the Deadpool costume most likely being one of the most popular, and then Wolverine. And that ultimately we're given a boring film that plays on things you would be familiar with, but unlike more astute creative team doesn't do anything interesting with them. So you and I like bad movies, and they can be fun when you can, unfortunately, make fun of them while watching. They like, I want to just call it like blandum web, because that's what the film is. It doesn't offer any visuals. I don't know if you saw this today. There's a reused shot from Spider-Man 2 in this movie.
Oh, really? I didn't see
So
that.
it's in spoilers. But yeah, I'm kind of at a loss that this exists now. I like how?
I mean, it's baffling that they went forward with it. It's baffling that there are movies that seem better that have been shelved,
Yeah.
a la DC,
Mhm.
that just said, you know what, we're just not even going to release it. And then someone watched this and was like, yeah, let's send it out.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so it's baffling to just sort of think that some things get passed through and others don't. I know, like I said, there are some contract obligations for this to be able to keep rights and everything. And I think that might be the only reason why they pushed it through.
I don't it's yeah, I'm at a loss, partially because there are elements of this that do work for me. I think the
Yeah.
cast of the young Spider Women, so that's Sydney Sweeney, Isabella, I think it's probably Merced, but if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. And then Celeste O'Connor. The dynamic of the three of them automatically should have just been a Spider Women movie. If you had, and again, I think it's been public, it's weird to talk about, but if you just, this is not what the movie is, so I don't feel necessarily like it's ruining anything. But if you had a movie of three young women somehow all getting distinct parts of Spider-Man powers, whether that's like, oh, I have the sense, you've got the super strength, and then you've got all the agility and whatnot. Oh, what do we do with this? And steal from yourself and just kind of take Miles's thing. You don't even need a Spider-Man. Maybe the Spider-Man in this universe is dead. Who knows? But you and like, I never like using representation and quadrants as a negative, but you do have that as a, like, because I don't, representation is clearly is important as the industry moves forward to have more people represented on screen. You've covered that with your three different Spider Women. And the best part about the movie is when we actually get to learn their backstory. And I credit Sydney Sweeney, who clearly put in the research for this, talking about what she wanted Julia Cornwall or Julia Carpenter to do with her physicality when she is Spider-Woman. This to me got probably greenlit the same day they greenlit that wrestling movie with Bad Bunny that ultimately never got made. Like, I'm not angry this exists. I'm like you where, okay, rights, but it's just baffling that this is what this is. Like, this cost $80 million. Deadpool in 16 cost $80 million.
Yeah.
Like, I'm at a loss because what's confusing to me, and as I mentioned, I don't want this to come off as like, oh, I'm mad at her as a human being, because I don't know Dakota Johnson at all. But typically in this, you're getting either somebody on the rise, where it's like, all right, this is their big break. We know their star is hot. We're gonna move them, whatever. Or we got a star and we can easily sell this. And based on a lot of her work, I would say she counts as neither. Like, Fantastic Four is a really interesting casting because you're getting a lot of people on, I would say, approaching their peak. Pedro Pascal, I think, will continue to just do whatever, but Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Eben Moss-Backrack are all clearly, just ironically, like, flaming with popularity right now. Like The Bear, like Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things, Vanessa Kirby in The Crown, and all sorts of other things. I guess Mission Impossible being the most recent. Sydney Sweeney's probably the most popular star in this, and you and I were baffled that she's like, why isn't it just Spider-Woman?
Well, I heard there is a rumor that Dakota thought this was a Marvel film. She thought this was part of the MCU, and it was just bad fact checking that she didn't understand that it wasn't actually part of that universe. So I don't know where the disconnect would be, or if that's even true. But I mean, that could be why people started signing on to this, thinking it was going to be something more, or maybe they were impressed by Into the Spider-Verse, and that, maybe they saw something in Venom, and they were really hoping this was going to go to the next level, right? And this was going to put Sony back on the map. You always hear about those underdogs, and there are always movies like that that come out of nowhere and surprise. So, maybe they were just hoping.
I don't understand. I get that Sony feels the need. There's a dog barking on my window. To make more of these, like, they own the Spider-Man universe, right? That's why they can play with all the different toys that are under the Spider-Man banner. And Venom seems easy. Craven at minimal, at least, is going to be R-rated, so it will offer something that at least Venom hasn't given us. And honestly, Russell Crowe doing a terrible Russian accent, I know you and I are going to be there day one for that anyways. But just I don't know. It's not a good movie. I don't recommend it. I don't feel that it'll fit in with it's so bad, it's good, it's entertaining to watch. Like, no, you and I were laughing at things, but I think that was just to absolve our boredom. So we're going to jump into spoilers, because then I think the dissection on why this doesn't work, I don't think it's unfair. I don't think it's cruel. A lot of it, and again, I know coming at I mean, Chris is a film school graduate, so his opinion is much more precise than mine probably will be. But with the amount of, well, he's shaking his head no, but the amount of content that I've consumed, it just, we'll get into it. So if you just want to enjoy a full-fledged spoiler conversation, it's coming up next. Cue the sound clip.
You don't think this is weird, how we're all connected?
So I was having a conversation earlier about this, which felt like, as I mentioned, was with the David Bowie. I think it was David Bowie. Somebody might want to fact check that. It might have been a different movie. But how they didn't actually say anything Spider-Man universe related. Like, outside of it being Spider-Man, and so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they actually say Ben Parker. It's just,
they just say Ben.
They say Ben, he's got a sister Mary, and Mary's married to Richard, right? And like,
yeah.
I think it's really unfortunate, because Morbius got memed so hard, Sony released it twice. And at minimal, you had some zeitgeist with how ridiculous this was. And the Amazons line from the trailers, my mom was in the Amazon studying spiders until she was killed by Ezekiel Sims or whatever, is not in the movie, which I feel like is a complete disappointment, because that is the Avengers Endgame cheer moment for this film, because it was so funny. I want to know what they pitched Adam Scott to be in this movie, because
they gave him a case of Pepsi and they said, this case will never end, because you will be in the best Pepsi commercial we've ever made, the most expensive Pepsi commercial.
I don't even know if that's true, though. Like, 80 million feels like not that much for an ad. So Chris and I played this game throughout the movie, which was clearly there was a lot of Pepsi advertisements. And at any point in the film, could we see red, white, and blue? You would,
to the point where there's an entire neighborhood painted only red, white, and blue for an entire scene, which was crazy.
Yeah. And again, I actually, on concept, so this is going to be so stupid, and I know it's stupid, but with the same problems I have with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is the conception on creating a star who lived through the different eras of Hollywood could be so compelling. Like a young kid at Talkies goes through the Silver Age, right? In like all the different eras and whatnot, right? The death of the Western and whatnot. That if you actually had a Madam Web character whose kind of whole existence has been intertwined with the three previous Spider-Men, that is a brilliant pitch. And you could play with, they don't even need necessarily to be in the movies. I know it's something that was pitched around Spider-Man No Way Home, which was if they didn't get Toby and Andrew, we were going to see Doctor Strange and Tom in set pieces from those movies. And the concept, what this actually is no, it's just a random 2003 New York. We don't, because you can't, get any references to the other SPUM movies with Craven and Morbius, and Venom, because those all have happened in the present at release. So they don't say Parker. The fact that they actually go, yeah, we're being chased by some kind of spider person. And it's not as if, because I think as much as people are going to hate / love this, it's not as if it's played up like, well, you don't know, it could be a man or a woman if somebody says person, right? Because it's a non-binary statement. But that's not the case because it's 2003. This is it feels like someone went, well, James Gunn uses music. Why don't we just do music from 2003 and then we'll be in 2003? Like, there's a moment where Dakota Johnson is driving in a taxi cab listening to Toxic, and the girls are dancing at some diner, and she's hitting her radio like, come on, keep playing. And you and I looked at each other like, why does the song matter? It's not as if the movie indicates to us, which I think is the point, but it doesn't, is that she knows where in the song she needs to be, but that doesn't happen. She just drives into the diner to hit Ezekiel Sims. Who's the best? Outside of Sydney Sweeney and the other girls, he's the best part because he's just like in his own movie.
Yeah, he's completely different movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And like,
I love the go-to that as long as you see a blockbuster, you're in the 90s now. The second, so we saw it in Marvel, right? Mm-hmm. Captain Marvel, and we see it in this. That's the go-to now. As long as you see a blockbuster, you're in the 90s, we're fine. The rest of the movie will just float with that.
Yeah, it's funny to me. They build up, so there's these spiders that bite people and they give you the powers, the Spider-Man powers, for all minus the web shooting. And thank God Steve Ditko and Stan Lee gave him web swinging, because man spider powers when you're just hopping around, it's so dumb. Like, not to say I don't think the movie does it poorly, it's just not nearly as exciting. And
yeah,
so she has these deja vu powers. And again, I don't dislike Dakota Johnson as a human being. Quite frankly, I feel really bad for her probably having to promote this. It doesn't sound like she's seen it, so I don't actually know. But there's a lot of people, Kofi Outlaw, friend of the show, one of the interviews from comicbook.com, somebody was like, this is the first Madam Web comic book. And just, I get, nobody likes these press junkets, but this character is charismaless, and it's not that I don't need Cassie to be this plucky person. That's like why Julia works in the movie. But the performance is always at a 2, which, whether that's based on script, direction, or her choices as an actor, ultimately it makes for a comically bad performance. And
well, it's just listless. There's just nothing there. You can't even laugh at it. Like, at least when someone like John Cena comes on screen, he knows what he's doing, right? He's doing a character. If he's in the Fast franchise, he's hamming it up a little bit more even. But this, there was nothing there. There was no emotion at all. We were joking. I've never seen someone drive an ambulance through New York City with someone dead in the back and just no emotion at all, just
No.
completely as blank face.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because I feel like it's a perfect segue to the second sponsor of this movie, which was CPR. Because if you are dead, CPR solves everything. Like hitting a
everything.
car crash, CPR. Like, obviously your heart stopped, fine, yes, but it's not as if it is solves, like, you're dead, CPR will fix you. Like, shattered pelvis,
did we do a
CPR.
Was there a count? Like, I think 4 people needed CPR, 3 survived. So, I mean, those odds are great in
It's
CPRs.
baffling to me. My wife is a nurse, and she's like, no, so we are so let's do a CPR count, all right? It's going to be the clip that I'm going to share for this episode. So,
see, I've already started to block out the movie, so can we even remember
I
it fully?
think we can. So, here we go. All right, we're going through, and some of these connect to kind of like the whole point, I guess. So, the first one is, as you mentioned, she's driving the ambulance in the very beginning. Ben is giving CPR. All right?
In the back, yeah.
The next one is Cassie dies, CPR.
Yep.
The next one after that is the random guy from the barbecue. No, sorry. She's giving CPR to a guy having a vision for him dying. Then that guy.
And he just wakes up nonchalantly. Yeah. Like, that one's my favorite, where he just like wakes up and she's like, yeah, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Then the guy that we witnessed earlier.
The neighbor.
Right?
Yeah, the barbecue.
From the barbecue earlier. And then we saw your favorite cameo, which was, it turns out it's a baby shower for Emma Roberts. Interesting again in this that it's not like, what are you going to name that? You know what this movie actually needed? And I'm just thinking about it. This movie unironically should have had the What I've Done ending. That, you know, when that was trending for a while, it's like if this movie came out in 2007, it would end with like, I think I sent you the Kenobi one, was like, hello there. And then it plays the song. This needed Ben being handed the baby and him being like, oh, what did you decide? She's like, Peter. And then it goes like Madam Web. Although we get an equally stupid.
But do you even get Peter? Or do you just get like,
yeah,
and then it cuts out?
Yeah. His name is blank Ben Parker. Because I'm pretty, yeah.
Right.
And so then we get that CPR. Oh, wait a minute. No, do they give CPR or attempt to give CPR to Cassie's mom when she's dead? I don't think so.
No. So, she just dies on her own because everyone else gets
our
killed.
CPR,
and then we have, and then there's the instructional video on CPR where she teaches 3 teenagers how to do CPR on the dummy.
Yeah, to the dummy. And they get tired after, and then they, so this movie was brought to you by,
and then Cassie again.
So this movie was brought to us by CPR. Right? So we have Ben Parker doing it, and then technically Cassie is involved in that same one. So I'm going to give that's one. Then we have Cassie receiving it from Ben Parker when she's dead. Yeah. Then Cassie giving it to a random guy who gets up totally fine. Then the guy we met at the barbecue. The instructions, so that's technically 5, and then Cassie dying again. So we have 6. Yeah. 6 different instances where CPR, outside of the practice, went 5 for 5. No, 4 for 5. 80% likelihood, which honestly, CPR is great. Like, if you are in yes, but I'm sorry, it is ridiculous. Paramedics, all they do is CPR. Like, they don't bandage, they don't make tourniquets, none of that. Just pulmonary. What does CPR stand for? I'm so tired. What is CPR? It's pulmonary something. What is it? Cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There we go. Learn something new every day. So CPR, Pepsi and CPR are the sponsors of this movie. And the whole like, oh, I hate my mom because she went to the Amazon. First of all, who sells a woman a ticket that visibly pregnant? Like, who sells her that ticket? Okay.
Yeah.
And so
the same person who then sold someone who's on a watch list another ticket to get to Peru later.
Yeah, a plot point that goes absolutely nowhere, that she abducted those young girls.
She's in the paper.
Yeah.
She's in the paper, driving around in a stolen taxi cab without plates, banged up, and they cannot find her.
No, she popped
But
the plates off. She's gone. Like, it's
God,
1940s.
God.
We lost the car, so we have no idea
But-
where she is.
But as long as a woman is in the back seat of a random car, they can ID her face driving past a convenience store in 93.
2003. That's another thing.
2003.
Like,
Sorry,
this
yeah.
Peter Parker that is born in this film doesn't fit with any of the universes, which, again, I get if you can't use any of the Peters, but that doesn't actually matter. If you made this 93, okay, fine, it's Andrew. Nobody actually expects to see him. It is... I don't get it. I really don't understand. And the film tries to have this message of Cassie hated her mom because she was in the Amazon, and then she gets essentially, and this is where for me I get more frustrated, where it's like when visuals are just taken from other things. She gets Doctor Stranged. Like, she goes down to Peru, and South American man spider Kalima's her in the chest. And then she's like, oh, and she shows up in the spider connection. And she gets to, like...
But was it just me, or did you not get that she hated her mom until that one scene where she was like, I hated my mom?
That was it, yeah.
Like, otherwise, she just seemed indifferent.
Yeah, but that, like, it's... This character... If... Again, I've only written one script in my life. It was Space Jam 2.
It was brilliant.
Thank you. But the way that I plotted the character's arc out, I quite literally had... bullet points, like, I need these things, this is how I want, and it was just character. Like, that's all that was written down here. And it was baffling to me that at this phase, like, people have obviously been much more critical, I would say to some degree unfairly, of phases 4 and 5 of the MCU. But how this stuff gets through feeling so unfinished is just frustrating, because you are burning characters you can't use anytime soon again. Like, this means we're not gonna get a Spider-Woman movie because you just wasted 3 of them. And anything there, it's one of the elements that really frustrates me in particular when it comes to action sequences more recently in generic blockbusters, is the unoriginality is just boring to watch. I'd rather watch uninteresting conversations between actors, because at least it's like, oh yeah, people are talking fine. But when it's incoherent action set pieces, and then after one visit to Peru, she's able to be using her next powers like Nicolas Cage, which again,
I am happy we didn't get a montage, though.
That's true.
I'm glad they didn't extend that out even more. We just have to assume
she figured it out.
That she figured it out, right? Like, and that's the thing with this movie. It's just, you have to sort of assume some things, and then the stuff that they tell you is completely pointless. Like, you're telling me that this woman who was raised in an orphanage and all she had was this book from her mom, that she doesn't have that book memorized?
I was thinking the same thing with the photo. She sees him with his mask.
She was like, I need 3 hours. Right? Like,
yeah, this is all I have left. This photo is burned in my memory. She sees him, goes back, and it's like, wait a minute. Oh!
Right? But would this not take one read through for someone to go, wait, this doesn't make sense? I mean, you and I are identifying these huge plot points that make no sense, and this got through somehow. Like, was this like a broken telephone, like, script writing room? I don't get it.
And even thinking about, like, I made the joke to you in the theater where it's like, Ben Parker, Peter gets born after witnessing a Spider-Man do things like, Peter, did I ever tell you about the time I took your mother to the hospital and there was this man jumping around like a spider? Like, it, honestly, I would forgive the stupidity if it was just Mary, because we know Mary dies. Or, I mean, she does. Canonically, Mary always dies. And so she would never have told Peter these things. right? Like Ben is with Peter till 14, 15, depending on, sometimes 16, depending on the way the origin story is being told. It's just baffling to me that you're right, an incomplete, incoherent script. Because that's, for me, where all of these problems lie, right? If the foundation for what this movie was supposed to be is so poor, it leads to everything else. Like, oh, what's the action set piece going to be? We'll figure it out. And then she's told you can be in 3 places. Oh, it's like, okay, well, I can now. And when you accept great power, when you accept great responsibility, you are given great power. I joked with you. It was a lot of people made this joke, so it's not original, but that it should have been on the fortune cookie, kind of incomplete. Like, with great power, what? Like, just have that, and that would have felt more satisfying than somebody saying it backwards.
Twice. Not even once, but twice
in the
right?
film. Yeah, it's, man. And then, to me also, I'm just like, the whole movie just confused me left to right, which is Ezekiel Sims' motivation, because they try to not have him be just a complete villain, which, kudos, I guess, which is like, he sees the Spider Women killing him. He probably deserved it, but still, he sees them killing him. And then we see Madam Web, who gets blinded and gets Ray-Bans from 1996 as her goggles, and it's like, well,
she bought them at that Blockbuster.
Exactly.
I think.
They'll become Spider Women. Why? Why will they become Spider Women?
There's nothing to indicate they would.
They don't even know the spider exists outside of them being like la lula la. Like, sorry, I shouldn't make fun of it because it's probably actual Spanish, but I don't know what it is. They're looking.
The thing that got me too was the. Do you remember the line Ezekiel says to her? She goes, it's something like, you underestimated me just like your mother underestimated me. That's like, no, all she did was hire you to protect her. She had no idea who you were, and then you shot her.
Yeah, she wasn't like, oh, you're beneath me, I have the spider. And he's like, nope, bang.
We've been doing this for years. How dare you? No, there was nothing like that.
No, he didn't know you existed because he thought you died. She didn't know she had some disease that got cured from the spider when her mom, like, it's, there are days where I miss like Mystery Science Theater, and it's days like this where,
yeah, right.
It is so much worse than Morbius. And I was saying today, at minimal, Morbius has Jared Leto probably believing he was a vampire man, and Matt Smith just having a freaking ball. And that is at least fun to watch. And this offers none of those things.
No, not at all. The only fun was in a flash forward of these girls showing their powers for like a split second where you're like, oh, this might be a much better movie. And then it just cuts away, and then it never actually solidifies.
No. So yeah, so that shot where it zooms up to the building is apparently from Spider-Man 2. So they used a 20-year-old couple seconds of film because maybe they went, oh no, how are we going to get the camera to the top of the building? I don't know, swing it! It's Spider-Man!
Well,
I can't. This movie sucks. Don't go see it. It's honestly, it's most frustrating to me because 2024 is going to be such a lean year for movies that this is one of the ones we got. Like,
it's a missed opportunity. Like, it really is. The problem with these superhero movies are you have the subject matter there. Mm-hmm. You can pull from so many comics, and literally all you need is a half-decent script writer or, writer circle to go through it. And it's just a missed opportunity. Like, simplify. Mm-hmm. The tools are already there.
Yes, I had somebody ask, apparently last week, was it last week? The week before, didn't really recommend Argyle. Go see Argyle. If you actually want to know what to go see in 2024 so far, I would recommend Argyle. that will do it for spoilers. Let's jump into the outro so you can find out what's coming out next week. So last week's question on Spotify was, which Super Bowl trailer did you like the most? Chris, of the Super Bowl trailers, which one did you like the most?
I mean, Deadpool's fun.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see Yellow Wolverine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it didn't tell me anything, but it was just fun to see it. I know it's going to come. At least I know those movies are fun and worthwhile watching. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but Planet of the Apes looked incredible.
The more I see of that, the more
Like,
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
it looked really cool. I wasn't hyped about it before, but like seeing it, I'm remembering, and I mean, that's a decent trilogy so far. So, I mean, it's exciting to see that.
I agree.
Which one did you like?
It's probably Deadpool, just based on it being what a lot of people are thinking to be the morphine to the MCU for a lot of people. And not to mention, finally actually seeing comic, and this is not a discredit of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. He's on the Mount Rushmore of Marvel comic actors of all time. But comic accurate suit with an actual comic accurate Deadpool, that looks super cool. And so we got a response from Stephanie that says the Fall Guy looks like so much fun. It's true. I do. That does look. I love David Leitch, ironically, who made Deadpool 2, going to be making that, or is making that. So that does look really entertaining. And I think more films like that should be successful, because if you're going to the theater for just fun and spectacle, something like that, I certainly think is going to scratch that itch. Next week's episode is going to be a little bit differently. February 21st, 22nd, there's going to be a substantial amount of TV hitting our streaming platforms with the live action Avatar, The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water is probably my guess. I know it's 8 episodes, as well as the first 3 episodes of Bad Batch, Season 3, the final season, is coming out. So other than that, I don't think there is going to be anything else major to talk about. If anything else does come up, of course, make sure you are following the podcast on all the social media platforms. And if you are only a podcast listener and don't know, if you enjoyed my reactions to the Super Bowl trailers in audio form, if you make sure to follow the podcast on YouTube Shorts, or just YouTube in general, TikTok or Instagram, because that's where that's where you can see my full reactions. And those aren't scripted. Those are all raw initial impressions of those trailers. This week, there was obviously the Super Bowl ones. I also, yesterday, date of recording, released a reaction to Invincible Season 2 Part 2 trailer and the first teaser for X-Men 97. So those are available there. Please make sure you are following and or subscribed on all your social media platforms. It's the best way to find out what's going on with the podcast and the best way to keep up with me. Chris, thanks for being back on the show. I think our next movie we're seeing together is Dune. So
sweet.
Dune 2. So you can look forward to that review in the upcoming weeks as well. I'm Kyle Naranya, the Film Realist. We'll see you next time.